So I need you to work with me. I need you all to work with me and make me feel comfortable because I need it. That's one of the reasons why I'm on stage. Yes, strategy is a service with an exclamation mark. This is it's pretty strong stuff. So I have to warn you. I have this slide. This is my first slide in every presentation I give because I will show you some clever thinking and some clever doing. And since I come from the design craft, I know how to communicate these things so that they make sense, even if they don't make sense, right? We all know that. So, and I want to encourage everyone, and I hope I raise enough questions with my talk to encourage that you all are forced to think on your own. Because one thing I have learned in my speaking practice is that people are lazy. Not you, but some people are lazy and they look for recipes. There are no recipes in here. There are only suggestions because as we know, everything is iterative. I cannot give you a recipe anyway. So you have to cook up your own. So my guiding motto, as Alfred North Whitehead's guiding motto is to seek simplicity and then distrust it. Because there might be something else. What makes companies successful with a capital S? Which is just a typo, but I pretend it is intentional. So I make it quick. We saw this graph before. It's from Forrester. It's fairly recent. They just brought out a book about customer experience and why it makes sense to the business. We don't even have to discuss that anymore because there's now enough proof from a business perspective. You can make wonderful cases. There is the customer experience index, which shows that through the recent recession, all companies that have customer experience at their core and also kind of project that meaningful into the market to create value for customers, they weren't affected by the recession as much. They even outperformed, right? Remember that Apple had their best fiscal year right on the top where everybody was in the trenches? And why is that? Because everything that happened in the past is not means of differentiation in the market anymore. There's only one chance now, since everything is so connected and all the customers are empowered, we have to deal with it. And I want to talk about how I think we can deal with it. Another graph. Nice drawing from Dave Gray from his new book, The Connected Company, that I urge everyone to read. It's already available as a Kindle version. And I love his drawings. It's the other thing, right? Everybody who focuses on services excels. Yes. And we are all service designers, right? So in the old world, inputs, black box, outputs. We have talked about it. We have heard about it. In the new world, process turns into service. Everything informs each other. We learn from actions and interactions and so on. This is all fair and this is all nice. And we have seen a lot of examples. So it's imminent. Customer centricity and service orientation are the key factors for success, for sustainable success. Yes, right? Is the service economy the real challenge or opportunity that businesses are facing? Or a symptom of a larger dawning? Oh, so nice and quiet. This is what's happening out there. And I always say I need to make animation of this because this doesn't represent what we are living in. We are living in constant flux. Everything is accelerating. There is more data every day. There are more interactions every day. All your fancy customer journeys, they are they are stacked up like 1,000 individual customer journeys that big data systems have to cope with. Right? But then, there are humans that want to make sense out of that because most of these systems, we'll get to that later, they're driven by human goals. And human goals are driven by the cognitive limitations of the human mind. And what are those? We cannot think holistic. We cannot think about all these things at the same time. Some of the systems help us with it, technology helps us with it, but we have to make sense of it. We can only concentrate on one thing at a time. Maybe one and a half, if there's just this thought from this morning that just doesn't want to get out of my head, and so it challenges me concentrating, talking to you. So from a business leadership perspective, I'm not talking here as a designer, I'm talking as an advocate of my clients. This is not really a good situation. And seeing that acceleration, seeing the raising levels of complexity. So business leadership has a problem. Or maybe not a problem, maybe they have problems. So a company making everything, it's the company. So what does a business leader look at? He has like all these external forces, right? We know this. Everybody who has like concerned himself a little bit with business strategy knows, yeah, there are the externalities. That's what we blame everything on. So when something doesn't work, we say, there was this wicked stuff that like the economy like changed and so on, financial system. So externalities. It's true. And then there are the internal forces. And there were fantastic talks during the course of this morning pointing at these things, that the internal forces, well, what does a company consist of? It offers some products or services in a marketplace. And I don't want to like spawn a discussion what a difference between a product and a service is. Then we will have people probably going to war, but we get to that later because I will talk about war as well. We have organization, the way the company organizes around what it produces, what it tries to achieve, and we have resources that help with that. And we have culture. Like in one of the first papers in the 70s around like emergent strategy practices, a professor called it bureaucracy. He didn't talk about culture, and I think often the culture is bureaucracy, getting in the way of everything. Why is that? Because humans like to interact with each other and not at the same time, because they have different goals. As we all know, since we are all practitioners of a human-centered design practice called service design. So to make things even worse, and I can go on about this forever, some people have heard me before, know this, and will probably already fall asleep, is that all these systems that I already simplified are embedded in each other and 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 so on. So this is that's the executive that I'm the advocate for. Still, he has been making his fortune in the old days. That's why he has this huge property where he's like can wander his woods on the weekend and think about how he solves those challenges. Thinking. Interesting. It's a very particular human thing, right? That we think. Isn't that what distinguishes us from the animals? It's a non-tangible action, thinking, yeah? It's like making a plan. But in some respect, it's also a design process, right? It's trying to change a situation, an existing situation, to a preferred one. That is the core definition of design. Not aesthetics, not process, not non-process. This is all layered on top of it. So I say this because I want to provoke you. And he can't see the forest for the trees in that situation that I just explained, with like all the complexity, all the even though he can wander around, but he feels something that we all know. He feels fear that he loses all of that because he can't secure it. And that's why he starts to strategize after realizing that he's pretty much fucked. So what to do? He has to embrace the interconnection, the interconnectedness of things. Aha, okay, I need a holistic perspective. This is fantastic. And there are so many tools out there, technologies that help me with like getting a holistic perspective on things. But I still have to start with myself. Yeah, the ecosystem. Yes. There is circular causality, and when I do something, it influences what happens later to others and to myself in the long run. But the important aspect in it is that most of what I know about service design, when I interact with service design practitioners or agencies, is that they are often, if we talk about balance, focusing on the marketplace, on like selling products or services to customers. So the humanness in it becomes kind of a vessel for a pretty old-fashioned transactional model of like, I want to sell you something. And that is fair. If that is my goal, you can pursue that goal. But if that are not the goals of your employees and your organization, if they are only slightly different, you will have a hard time to achieve that goal. And Pia was referring to that and some other speakers as well, that the organization, the culture in the organization is as important as what I am doing in the marketplace. So if I draw a line of interaction between the marketplace and between the internal organization, which one is more important? None. They are both equally important, because what we know, all this wonderful methodologies and all this knowledge of like how humans function, we have to bring into the organizations, because it's not the design agencies that solve these problems. It has to be the organization itself, because that is the group of people that has the fundamental goal and intent to achieve something. And even if it's selling, I don't know, pink reindeer to pygmies. If they have done their research, they know that there's a small fraction of pygmies that has a high income, and no, so okay. So that means, and this is only the internal organization. Well, sometimes you like, there's the front end of innovation, there's the back end of innovation, no matter what you call it, internal, external. And then, I just told you the ecosystem, there are even more actors. There are suppliers, there are agencies, and even they have suppliers, the freelancers, and so on. So we have to embrace that, to see the forest and the trees. And Peter Senge wrote a book like over 10 years ago, and some academics took notice of it, and now it has like the redawn. It's called the fifth discipline, which gives like basically lends systemic thinking foundation to organization design. And the funniest thing is that the first principle that is in there is called self-mastery of the individual, that like an organizational designer who doesn't know himself can't help an organization to change. It's pretty Buddhist stuff, but I have no hair, so I can say that. I'm a practical Buddhist who likes to make money. In these days, this is a pretty good combination, actually. So again, I gave away a little bit, okay? So we need a plan to cope with this. But before I tell you about the plan to cope with this, I go 300 years before Christ was born back. I was looking into what are the oldest books on strategy, on thinking to achieve something. There are two books. The oldest book that is like kind of like referenced as the oldest book on management and strategy is The Scripture of Wealth by a guy called Vishnugupta. He is run by many names, but the thing is he was an advisor to who else? The most powerful man, a king. And the king wasn't satisfied with his kingdom, so he wanted more kingdoms. So he wrote a very elaborate paper about how he achieves that. It's often compared to Machiavelli's The Prince because violence is a valid option, right? So, because the guy didn't think about sustainable design, that like if I kill like all these people in my future kingdoms, this will not sustain my kingdom. This will eventually, in a causal loop, kill my kingdom. Nonetheless, the first goals were, I want to have more than I have. And it was a very, very individual goal. The other book is more known, 100 years later, is The Art of War by Sun Tzu. And all the strategy principles or patterns in there are still valid today, if you look at them, in terms of like dynamics between different actors with different goals. So wealth and war seem to be in the human nature when they think about design. I want to change the situation to a preferred situation by means of design. The thinking design discipline is what I would call strategy. Don't think about design thinking for a moment, please, please. Design thinking is design doing. So strategy embodies timeless principles driven by human nature. Oh, this is interesting. If that's the case, then a strategist should understand human factors. Right? Because if our organizations are driven from the human nature and core goals that are independent of whatever means we use to achieve them, a strategist should know it. Because strategy is human. And I know all of you feel like, the damn German. I mean, it's like, what a rationalist. We want to paint pictures. We want to do body painting. We want to feel nice. I'm a loving rationalist. I think rationalism gets you really to the core of the beauty of being human and not looking away from all the flaws that have actually produced the problems that we have today and that create a huge anticipation, especially amongst this community, that we can change that. And I believe we can, but we have to look the devil into the eye, and the devil is us, to become a phoenix from the ashes. So what strategy is artifact? We are designers, right? We create artifacts. A plan. Well, that's what Chandler said, you know, in the 60s. And it's a plan is defining a course of action, aiming, changing an existing situation into a preferred one, shaped by goals and constraints. One main point there in Chandler is clear analysis of the situation so that you will raise the probability to be successful with it. I come to newer models. A plan is defining a course of action. It sounds pretty familiar because this is what some academics claim design is. Design is a course of action. So my course of action when I do a strategy is, die Vorgehensweise ist der Plan, die Strategie. But I'm a designer, so the strategist is a designer. This is nice because now both disciplines don't have to like think they need more of the other one. They just have to understand them on their common grounds and can do their work together. As we have learned from service design, if you do things together, but in your core expertise, you can achieve wonderful things. But everybody wants to be everything. Doesn't make any sense. It's not efficient. Because efficiency still counts, because we are adaptive, complex adaptive systems that are run by energy. So we have to be careful with our energy. So strategy thinking and doing, and design, which is doing, are human nature. So, and here's one thing, strategy is not tactics. So a lot of designers, they always like misunderstand tactics with strategy. So to put out a couple of e-reading devices by Amazon on the market, that's not a strategy, it's a tactic. The strategy is to serve human needs in a way and shape, human needs that never change, and offer the most current means to achieve that, which is a tactic. So if nobody else has a good reading device, bam, I give them a reading device. That's not where I make my money. Not tactics. Strategy, the term strategy comes from war. It's going back to a Greek word, which basically means generalship, authority. It's like the guy who thinks about thinking up the battle plan. So, tactics is what weapons do I use? Can I get weapons from some supplier that the other can't get? We know the US is doing this up to this day, and it will probably be their demise. So that's why I say strategy is a human-centered design practice. Oh my, this guy's crazy. these guys are only thinking and they're not even looking. They're only taking our research, synthesizing it, and make some weird assumptions that only serve their purposes. Yes, that's what most strategists do. A lot of strategists do. I have done it. We all have done it. But there's a new dawn. There's a new kind of strategist emerging because there are people from your field going into the strategy field. There are strategists that embracing new thinking that was born pretty much 25 years ago, and it's now really, really coming to fruition. Somebody told about the innovation cycles, that it takes technology, thinking, always takes 25 years. So read all the academic papers and you know what kind of technology will be a multi-million-dollar business in 25 years. Because 25 years ago, the first academic paper on touch surfaces was published. Strategy, being prepared. So strategy is a human-centered design practice, but only if you're taking strategy. If you take into account that at the core of strategy is always human drivers. That is pretty abstract stuff, I know. And everybody's like looking with like, God, give him the stare. Why is he even running around here and giving us a hard time when he just talks about all this abstract stuff? So what's at the core of this? At the core of this is this. Humans, two distinct humans, male and female. There's a lot of energy going on. I don't want to go into this. I don't want to make you comfortable or uncomfortable. 5 minutes, I know, I'm my worst enemy on like time, and it's already fast. What drives interaction in the world? Human-human interaction. The most basic one is the one between male and female because they have two different goal sets. We all know that. Sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. And they negotiate that, which creates a causal loop, which might change one or the other. There's some bargaining going on, and so like the more lightweight discourse around this from the social people is called, they have conversations. Yes. And technology augments these conversations, and all this is embedded in larger systems and so on. But at the end of the day, human interactions are goal-directed transactions because the human itself is a system with goals and negotiates with another system if they do something together or not. And since we are not, at the core of us, cannot be individual creatures because our species consists of a female and male part, our whole society is driven by these forces of negotiating, building little groups, then the group acts like an individual, it has certain goal sets, and they fight it out with the other. The funniest thing, though, is that even Sun Tzu, 3,000 years ago, knew that the purest excellence in war, by like basically achieving his goals by surpassing the other, is negotiation and not fighting at all, to achieve longevity and prosperity of everybody involved. Balance. So the ultimate warrior tries to achieve balance. God, more, is he a Buddhist? Of course. And then we have all these groups interacting, organization with the market. I talked about that before. Department A with Department B, employee with customer, husband with wife. But where does it become interesting? And where is it where the service designers have the most, I think, the most to give to strategists and strategists to learn from it, is that all of this is all abstract stuff if we are not concentrating on the point of interaction. So, and you, as a service designer, you concentrate on the points of interaction from a different perspective. But as a strategist, this is important because as strategists, we have to project the points of interaction in time to be able to create emergent strategy and not failing deliberate strategies. So that means humans first, because they just won't change. And their main expectations either. I talked about it before. Amazon model, right? The thing is why Amazon is so scary, because they are only focusing on the things that technology will never be able to touch. Because a thing has always to get delivered, other than if we have teleportation, well, they will use it, right? They're all the things they do, they basically they are leaders in all the areas around like retailing that are not affected by technology means. So they can all augment this with technology and the innovation in technology. This is pretty interesting. From a strategist perspective, every strategist should know that. And I talk to a lot of strategists, most of them, they don't even get that because they are technology illiterates. Or they are technology strategists and then they only look at a small fraction of the little chaos bubble that I showed you. So bridging the knowing-doing gap by means of collaboration. And so I'm back with my colleagues from a completely different angle, from a semiotic angle, is humans are multisensory beings. We use all our senses to create, to parse information, to transform that into knowledge, to inform design in the explanation how I understand design, or not I, how one of the more current academic discourses around this phrases it. And therefore, collaboration is of immediate need inside the organizations to build human-centered culture on all levels. Thinking, feeling, doing model, we know, but it really becomes interesting when you really look at like, it's a lot of thinking, feeling, doing loops that are interacting with each other and point fingers at each other because they don't have common goals, because the goals of their organization doesn't match with their personal goals and so on. We've talked about that. So this is why, again, the methodologies that you guys are using are so important in the organizations. And I always want to encourage the designers to not say like, to embrace the thinking aspect of it. I know we all love craft and artifact because that's how a lot of us were trained. But a plan is a wonderful artifact that creates wonderful physical and service artifacts. So the thinking discipline is extremely important. So I don't go into organizational design, we know all this, but here's the thing, somebody said like, oh, you can't embed the startup, you can't be a large corporation and a startup. I disagree. From the things that I have seen working also a lot in the States is you can do that. And even 3M is doing this for years. They create little teams can come together, create internal startups, and then they go create valid business models and businesses, and then they disperse again. So this is possible. But then, again, you have to approach it in a systemic sense where you see your company as an organism, you know? Where the cells can come together and so, boom, boom, boom. This you all know, toot, 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 toot. Everything that is important for you, strategists have to become more aware of. So, no, we know it all. I mean, tactical agility, intellectual agility, and emotional agility. As designers, we know that. A lot of strategists who are very much in their head don't know it. Large-scale visualization is helpful, even with strategy stuff. People seeing a strategy plan of like 5 by 10 meters, executives react totally different to it. And that's not an experience. This is not a service journey. This is like how something plans out over years. Or not. And dynamic mapping. And what I use, and that's maybe, so there's a little bit of tangible case in here, and then with no questions, because everybody's going to go away, is what I use triangulation to trick the human mind into being able to process more at once than they can. By like shifting them to the core fields of their problems in time. So you can concentrate as a group on one thing, get a download of it, and then if you're forced into the next one, you still have the shadow of what you were just working on influencing what you do next. And you can use this pretty successful for getting down the drivers of your organization. So this is what I call a systemic design mindset. Patterns and dependencies, all systems thinking driven, but the most important one, and I think this is where we all agree on, and this is where designers can infuse that kind of enthusiasm in any organization, is to work creatively with paradox, uncertainty, and contradiction. This is our biggest contribution we can give to today's organizations. And that works well with executives. You wouldn't believe it, but it does. So, thank you. That was the fastest talk I ever gave on this. It usually takes 40 to 50 minutes.